Please know if something happened to me, Tom Mallory did it. He will not stop stalking and harassing me.
New tonight at 11, we're hearing from the family of a woman shot and killed outside of the Spalding County Courthouse. And tonight, the daughter of Crystal Evans says her mother did not have to die because she believes law enforcement actually dropped the ball because of a history of domestic violence between her mother and the suspect.
September 13th, 2024. Crystal Evans walks across the courthouse parking lot. She's smiling. For the first time in years, she feels truly free. Just 2 days ago, her divorce was finally complete. The nightmare marriage was over. From inside a parked car, her ex-husband Tom Mallory sits perfectly still. His finger rests on the trigger of a loaded gun. Crystal reaches for her car door handle. She has no idea these will be her final moments. In just seconds, 5 gunshots will ring out in broad daylight, right outside the courthouse. The same courthouse where she had begged for protection just hours earlier. This was the same woman who had earlier cried for help on Facebook when she made a post stating, "Please know if something happened to me, Tom Mallory did it. He will not stop stalking and harassing me. I want him to stop following me, trying to show up everywhere I am. I have a divorce in order plus a PTO being filed. I hate to do this, but he will not stop. Please go on with your life and leave me alone." What you're about to hear is a heartbreaking story of how this 44 years old beautiful woman lost her life, even when it could have been prevented. Welcome to our channel. Please like this video, share and subscribe to this channel to help raise awareness and spread caution. Crystal Evans was just a bright-eyed girl growing up in Griffin, Georgia. Griffin isn't your typical small town. Violence here runs double the national average. It's the kind of place where bad things happen more often than they should. But despite growing up in this tough environment, Crystal became someone special. Crystal had this warmth about her that drew people in. You'd meet her once and remember her forever. She was authentic in a world full of pretenders. Growing up in Griffin, Crystal knew Tom Mallory from childhood. They rode the same school buses, attended the same classes, and shared that kind of deep familiarity that only comes from years of knowing someone. This long history would later make Crystal believe she truly knew the man she was marrying. It gave her a false sense of security that would prove deadly. In 2010, when Crystal was 30 years old, she married Tom. It seemed perfect. They weren't strangers rushing into marriage. They were childhood friends who had grown up together. Crystal threw herself completely into married life, becoming everything she believed a wife and mother should be. When their daughter Precious was born shortly after the wedding, Crystal didn't just become a mother. She became the ultimate mother. She was the type who went all in on everything. Family dinners every single night. Birthday parties that looked like Pinterest had exploded. Vacation photos that filled her Facebook feed. Crystal wasn't just playing house. She was consciously building something meaningful. A life, a legacy, a family foundation that would last. But Crystal's talents went far beyond motherhood. She and Tom started Mallory TMK Contracting Incorporated, a construction company that began small but grew rapidly. While Tom's name appeared on the official paperwork, Crystal was the real driving force behind the business. She handled operations, logistics, and finances. Basically, she ran every crucial aspect of the company. Crystal had this rare combination of traits that made her incredibly effective in business. She was creative but organized, tough but graceful. She could negotiate a complex contract in the morning and host an elegant dinner party that same evening. Her friends and colleagues knew the truth. Crystal was the real power behind their successful construction business. She had the brains, the drive, and the people skills that made everything work. For years, life seemed good. Crystal had a beautiful daughter, a growing business, and what appeared to be a solid marriage built on childhood friendship and shared dreams. But underneath this perfect surface, cracks were starting to show. The first signs of trouble came when Tom began having affairs. For Crystal, this betrayal cut deep, But she initially tried to hold their marriage together. She had Precious to think about. She had their business to consider. She had this whole life they'd built together. During this difficult time, Crystal started posting subtle hints on Facebook. Nothing direct enough to cause family drama, but small comments about feeling neglected and disrespected. Like many people, she found herself telling the internet what she couldn't bring herself to tell her friends and family directly. In 2020, Crystal even posted about how she and Tom had fallen back in love. She wrote about how God had restored their marriage. She mentioned being ready to divorce him at the start of the year, but claimed they had worked through their problems. But this happy reconciliation story was far from the complete truth. What Crystal didn't realize at first was that Tom wasn't just having regular affairs. He was living an entirely separate life, and when she finally discovered the full truth, everything changed forever. Crystal learned that her husband had been having relationships with multiple men, but it wasn't just about the affairs themselves. It was about how he was financing these relationships. Tom was using money from their business, the business that Crystal actually ran, to pay for his secret life. He was buying cars for his male lovers, taking them on expensive vacations, wining and dining them at fancy restaurants, all while Crystal stayed home raising their daughter and managing their company, all while she worked her tail off to build their business success. This discovery was devastating on multiple levels. It wasn't just the lying, though that was horrible enough. It wasn't just the cheating, though that broke her heart. It was the complete financial betrayal. Tom had been stealing from their joint business to fund his affairs. Imagine working day and night to build something, only to discover your partner has been secretly draining your hard work to pay for his betrayals. Crystal felt like she'd been played for a fool while Tom lived his authentic life, using her money and effort. The emotional devastation was overwhelming. Crystal had believed she knew this man. They'd grown up together. She'd trusted him with her heart, her daughter, her business, and her future. Now she realized she'd been married to a complete stranger. But Tom had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated the woman he was betraying. Crystal wasn't the type to suffer in silence. She wasn't going to quietly accept being made a fool of while Tom continued his double life with her money. True to her character, Crystal decided she wasn't going down without a fight. She took her evidence straight to online, but this time she didn't post subtle hints or vague complaints. This time she brought receipts. Crystal posted actual recordings of Tom arguing with one of his boyfriends. She shared explicit audio where you could hear Tom using harsh language and discussing their relationship dynamics. She detailed the gifts he'd purchased for these men using their business funds. In her posts, Crystal questioned why wives are always the last to know about their husbands' secret lives. She wrote about feeling like she'd been on the wrong team all along. Her pain and betrayal came through in every word. While Crystal had every right to expose his lies and theft, this public revelation would trigger something dangerous in Tom, something that would turn a cheating husband into a deadly threat. Because Tom had been watching every Facebook post, every screenshot, every recording, and every public call-out, and he didn't like being exposed. Not one bit. After discovering Tom's betrayal, Crystal made a decision that would change everything. She wasn't going to stay quiet about what he'd done to her and their family. Crystal took to Facebook, but this wasn't just venting or complaining. She came with evidence. She posted about Tom's secret relationships and how he'd been using their business money to finance his affairs. She shared details about the gifts he'd bought for other people while she worked to keep their company running. In her posts, Crystal wrote about feeling like she'd been on the wrong team all along. She questioned why wives are always the last to know about their husbands' secret lives. Her pain and anger came through in every word she typed. But Crystal didn't just post once and move on. She kept documenting what was happening. She shared screenshots and evidence of Tom's behavior. She made it clear to everyone who followed her that her husband had been living a double life at her expense. For Tom, being exposed publicly was the worst thing that could happen. He'd been living his secret life while maintaining his public image. Now everyone knew the truth. His family, friends, business contacts, They all saw what Crystal was posting, and Tom's reaction was immediate and terrifying. The combination of being exposed online and facing the possibility of divorce flipped a switch in Tom's personality. The man Crystal thought she knew disappeared completely. In his place was someone dangerous and unpredictable. But here's the scary part. Tom's violent behavior had actually started years before Crystal even filed for divorce. In 2019, 3 full years before the divorce papers were filed, Tom fired a gun outside Crystal's house. This wasn't an accident or a moment of anger. It was a calculated warning shot designed to terrorize her. After firing the gun, Tom did something even more twisted. He filed a false active shooter report with police. He tried to make it look like someone else was responsible for the gunshot. He possibly wanted to make Crystal appear unstable or paranoid. Think about how calculated that was. Tom fired a gun to scare his wife, then immediately called police to report a fake shooter. He was already planning to make Crystal look like the problem. But the 2019 incident was just the beginning. As Crystal's Facebook posts continued and divorce became more likely, Tom's harassment escalated into a full campaign of terror. He began showing up at Crystal's house at strange hours, not to talk or reconcile, but to let her know he was watching. He would follow her to stores, making sure she saw him. He started trailing their children after school. This wasn't love or even typical stalking. This was systematic intimidation designed to make Crystal understand that she was never safe, that he could get to her anytime, anywhere. Tom's harassment became more creative and more frightening. He crawled under Crystal's house to eavesdrop on her conversations. He cut off her utilities, water, power, and internet. He was trying to make her life impossible. But perhaps the most terrifying thing Tom did was forge legal documents. He actually forged a deed to Crystal's house using a stolen notary stamp. He was trying to steal her home right out from under her. During one particularly frightening incident, Tom barricaded Crystal inside her own house. While she was trapped, he told her exactly what he planned to do. He said he was going to kill her so his daughters would inherit the property. Let that sink in. Tom wasn't just threatening Crystal in the heat of anger. He was calmly explaining his plan to murder her for financial gain. Tom also began stealing from their shared business assets and selling property without Crystal's knowledge or consent. He was systematically destroying everything they built together while terrorizing her at the same time. Throughout all of this, Crystal continued documenting Tom's behavior on social media. She posted videos of him lurking around her property. She shared screenshots showing him driving past her house multiple times per day. In her posts, Crystal directly called Tom sick and warned the world that this man was dangerous. She wasn't being dramatic or exaggerating. She was literally trying to protect herself and warn others about what Tom was capable of. But Tom was watching every single post, every screenshot, every warning, and instead of backing down, he was getting angrier and more dangerous. The harassment reached a new low when Tom actually stole Crystal's car. Not borrowed or took by mistake, he outright stole it. Crystal had to post on social media asking people to watch for her vehicle and call police if they spotted it. When she finally got her car back, Crystal immediately had it repainted. She wanted to wash away any connection to Tom and the nightmare he'd created. By this point, Crystal knew she needed legal protection. The harassment was escalating, and Tom's threats were becoming more specific and more frightening. So she did what every domestic violence expert tells women to do. She went to court. In early 2023, Crystal filed her first protective order against Tom. She documented his stalking, his threats, and his increasingly dangerous behavior. She had evidence. She had witnesses. She had everything the legal system supposedly needed to protect her. But then something happened that shows just how broken our system really is. Crystal dismissed the protective order herself. Why would a woman being terrorized dismiss her own protection? There are several possible reasons, and none of them are good. Maybe Tom threatened her if she didn't drop it. Maybe he promised to change and she believed him. Maybe she was scared that a piece of paper would make him angrier. Whatever the reason, The first protective order was gone. But Tom's behavior didn't improve. If anything, it got worse. So Crystal tried again. She filed for a second protective order, gathering new evidence and new witness statements. She was determined to get the legal protection she desperately needed, but this second protective order was also dismissed, not because Crystal wanted to drop it, but because both parties failed to appear in court. Throughout 2022 and 2023, while these legal battles were happening, Crystal was posting monthly warnings on social media. These weren't hints or suggestions. She was directly telling the world that Tom Mallory wanted her dead. In one of her most chilling posts from 2023, Crystal wrote, "Please know if something happens to me, Mallory did it." Think about that for a moment. A woman was so afraid for her life that she was literally leaving evidence for police to find after her murder. She knew Tom was dangerous enough to kill her, and she wanted to make sure everyone knew who was responsible. Her friends saw these posts, her family read these warnings. Her daughter Precious watched her mother live in constant fear. This wasn't paranoia or drama. This was a woman documenting her own future murder. But the most frustrating part is that law enforcement saw these warnings too. They knew Tom had a history of violence. They knew about the gun incident in 2019. They knew about the stalking and harassment, and they did almost nothing. When Crystal called police about Tom's behavior, they treated it like a minor domestic dispute. When she showed them evidence of stalking, they said there wasn't enough proof. When she begged for help, they told her to file more paperwork. The day before her murder, Crystal called the sheriff's department because Tom was stalking her again. She was scared and needed immediate help, but according to her daughter Precious, they did nothing.
My mom literally called the sheriff department the day before because he was stalking her, and they did nothing.
Let me ask you something, and I really want you to think about this. Have you or someone you know ever tried to get a protective order? Did it actually protect you, or was it just a piece of paper? Drop a comment below and share your experience. Your story might help someone else who's going through the same thing. Because here's the harsh reality. Protective orders only work if they're enforced immediately and taken seriously. Too often they're treated like parking tickets instead of life or death situations. Crystal gathered affidavits from witnesses. She compiled testimony proving that her fears weren't imaginary. She had documentation going back years showing Tom's pattern of escalating violence. In August 2024, Crystal filed for an emergency protective order. She detailed the stalking, the threats, the break-ins, and the financial theft. She laid out a clear case showing that Tom was dangerous and getting worse. But even with all this evidence, even with years of documented abuse, the system moved at its usual slow pace. Crystal needed immediate protection. But she got bureaucracy instead. The most tragic part is that everyone around Crystal could see what was coming. Her friends were worried. Her family was scared. Her daughter was watching her mother live in terror. But the people with the power to actually protect her, the police, the courts, the legal system, treated her case like routine paperwork. They had no idea that their delays and failures were about to cost Crystal Evans her life. After years of legal battles, harassment, and living in fear, Crystal's divorce from Tom Mallory was finally complete. The marriage that had become a nightmare was officially over. For the first time in years, Crystal could breathe freely.
She was so happy after her divorce. She felt free. We were even talking about doing a party.
Her daughter Precious later described how happy her mother was that day. She was so happy after her divorce she felt free, Precious said. We were even talking about doing a party. Think about that. After everything Tom had put her through, the stalking, the threats, the financial theft, the constant fear, Crystal was ready to celebrate. She was planning a party to mark her freedom. She was looking forward to the future. For one brief moment, it seemed like Crystal had won. She'd survived Tom's campaign of terror. She'd gotten through the legal system. She was free to start over and build a new life with her daughter. But Tom Mallory had very different plans. When Tom learned that the divorce was finalized, his response was immediate and chilling. He sent Crystal a text message that contained just 2 words, "Not happening." Those two words revealed everything about Tom's mindset. In his mind, Crystal didn't get to leave him. She didn't get to be free. She didn't get to move on with her life. The legal system might have ended their marriage on paper, but Tom wasn't accepting that reality. Not happening wasn't just a text message. It was a threat. It was Tom telling Crystal that he would never let her go, no matter what any judge or legal documents said. The very next day, Thursday, September 12th, Tom's behavior escalated exactly as Crystal had feared it would. He began stalking her again, following her movements and making sure she knew he was watching. Crystal was terrified. She'd just gotten her freedom, and Tom was already trying to take it away, so she did what she'd been told to do. She called for help. Crystal contacted the sheriff's department to report that Tom was stalking her. She explained that her ex-husband was following her and that she felt unsafe. She needed immediate protection. But according to her daughter Precious, the sheriff's department did nothing. Once again, Crystal's pleas for help were ignored. The very people who were supposed to protect her treated her call like it wasn't important. And this proved to be deadly. On Friday, September 13th, Crystal had to appear in court for a hearing related to her divorce case. She also had an eviction hearing to attend afterward, as she worked in real estate and had professional obligations to handle. The hearing was in front of Judge Sam Parks at the Spalding County Courthouse. This was the same courthouse where Crystal had begged for protection multiple times. The same building where she'd filed protective orders and pleaded with the system to take Tom's threats seriously. Crystal brought her daughter Precious and a friend for support. She wasn't taking any chances. She knew Tom would be there, and she didn't want to face him alone. During the hearing, everything seemed normal. Legal proceedings moved forward as expected. Precious left early for another commitment, feeling confident that her mother would be safe in a courthouse surrounded by law enforcement. But what happened during that hearing would seal Crystal's fate. Judge Sam Parks had the power to make a decision that could have saved Crystal's life. Tom had violated multiple court orders. There were outstanding warrants. There was documented evidence of stalking and harassment. Judge Parks could have ordered Tom's immediate arrest. He could have had deputies take Tom into custody right there in the courtroom. He could have ensured that a dangerous man didn't walk free. Instead, Judge Parks made a decision that would haunt everyone involved. But before Tom left the courthouse that day, he had already made his own decision. He wasn't going to let Crystal walk away free. He wasn't going to accept that their marriage was over, and he certainly wasn't going to let her live to enjoy the freedom she'd fought so hard to achieve. As Crystal sat in that courtroom, feeling safe, surrounded by law enforcement and legal officials, she had no idea that Tom was already planning her murder. The system had failed her one final time, and this failure would cost Crystal Evans everything. Inside the Spalding County Courthouse, Judge Sam Parks faced a decision that would determine whether Crystal Evans lived or died. He had all the information he needed. Tom Mallory had violated court orders. There were outstanding warrants for his arrest. There was documented evidence of stalking and threats. Judge Parks had the power to order Tom's immediate arrest. He could have had deputies handcuff Tom right there in the courtroom. He could have ensured that a dangerous man didn't walk free to harm anyone. Instead, Judge Parks made a decision that defies all logic and common sense. He told Tom Mallory that he could turn himself in on Monday. Not immediately, not under escort, not with any supervision. Tom was free to leave the courthouse and spend the entire weekend doing whatever he wanted. Think about how insane this decision was. A man with a documented history of violence, stalking, and death threats was told he could turn himself in at his convenience, like he was returning a library book instead of facing serious criminal charges. Crystal's friend, who had come to support her, could see the danger immediately. She approached a court clerk and made a simple, reasonable request. She asked to have a deputy escort Crystal to her car. This wasn't an unusual request. Courthouses deal with domestic violence cases every day. They know that parking lots can be dangerous places for victims. Having a deputy walk someone to their car is basic safety protocol, but incredibly, no one responded to this request. No deputy was assigned, no security was provided. Crystal was left to fend for herself. After the hearing ended, Crystal felt a false sense of security. She was surrounded by law enforcement. She was at a courthouse. Surely she was safe here of all places. Tom left the courtroom first, and Crystal waited for him to go. She said goodbye to her friend and walked alone toward the exit. She had no idea that Tom hadn't actually left. He was waiting for her. Tom had positioned his car in the courthouse parking lot, where he could watch the exit. He sat there patiently, like a predator, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. This wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of anger. This was calculated, premeditated murder. Security cameras captured Crystal crossing the street in broad daylight. She was walking normally, probably thinking about her next appointment, or maybe even about the celebration party she'd been planning. She had no idea she was walking into a trap. Tom had thought this through completely. He knew Crystal's routine. He knew she'd have to walk to her car alone eventually. He knew that despite all the courthouse security, there would be a moment when she'd be vulnerable. And he was right. As Crystal reached her car and fumbled for her keys, Tom made his move. He pulled out his gun and fired 5 shots through his car window. 5 bullets meant to ensure that Crystal Evans would never threaten his control again. The shots rang out in broad daylight in full view of the courthouse where Crystal had just begged for protection. The same courthouse where Judge Sam Parks had decided that Tom Mallory could be trusted to turn himself in on Monday. By the time deputies heard the gunshots and rushed outside, it was too late. Crystal lay dying in the parking lot while Tom sped away, finally showing his true colors to the world. The system that was designed to protect Crystal had failed her in the most spectacular and deadly way possible. Every single person who could have saved her life had chosen convenience over safety. Bureaucracy over protection, process over people. And now a mother, businesswoman, and survivor was dead, killed in the shadow of the building that should have been her sanctuary. Tom's attempted escape didn't last long. Multiple law enforcement agencies pursued him, and when he was finally cornered, he shot himself under the jaw. But unlike Crystal, Tom survived his gunshot wound. The man who had terrorized, stalked, and murdered his ex-wife would live to face trial. The woman who had done everything right, who had followed every legal procedure, who had begged for help at every turn, was gone forever. Judge Sam Parks' decision to let Tom walk free had given him exactly the opportunity he needed to commit murder. And now everyone would have to live with the consequences of that choice. Everyone except Crystal Evans. 5 gunshots shattered the afternoon silence outside the Spalding County Courthouse. Crystal Evans collapsed beside her car, her dreams of freedom dying with her on the hot pavement. For 22-year-old Precious Evans, September 13th became the day she lost both her parents. "I feel like I don't have nobody," she said through her grief. "I don't have nobody to lean on to comfort me." But perhaps the most insulting response came from Sheriff Darrell Dix. Instead of offering condolences or taking responsibility for the system's failures, he posted on Facebook calling Tom and Crystal's relationship toxic and claiming both parties had made complaints. This victim-blaming response outraged the community who had watched Crystal beg for help for years. Crystal Evans was 44 years old when she died. She should be planning her daughter's future, growing her business, and enjoying the freedom she fought so hard to achieve. Instead, she's become another statistic in our broken system's failure to protect domestic violence victims. But Crystal's story doesn't end with her death. Her daughter Precious is fighting for justice, demanding accountability from the judge and law enforcement officials who failed her mother. She's planning rallies and vigils to ensure Crystal's death wasn't in vain. Crystal did everything right. She documented the abuse, sought legal protection, and warned everyone who would listen. The question isn't what she could have done differently. It's what our courts, police, and society must do better. If Crystal's story moved you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We need to keep telling these stories until the system changes, until judges take death threats seriously, until protective orders actually protect people. What other cases should we cover where the system failed victims? Drop your suggestions in the comments below. And don't forget to like and share this video, because stories like Crystal's remind us that justice delayed is often justice denied. And for too many victims, that delay costs everything.